is to ChatGPT. The first is that the commute-worthy workplace is a space where people feel they belong. To create a sense of belonging, we need to design a space as unique as the people who use it. An easy way for our clients to picture this is by looking at their homes. One of the reasons why the home is so attractive for work is that it's the one place people feel they truly belong. It embodies our story, our style, our identity. When you visit someone's home, you learn a lot about who they are and what they value. The office of today in a post-pandemic world needs to be a social and cultural destination. As we've discussed, for many, the home office has become that convenient, private, comfy space to do quality, focused knowledge work. Because unless you have flatmates or preschoolers running around, most people typically have full control of their home work environment. The opportunity here today came from a relationship that started at the craft beer club. Have a good time, build creativity, control, and support a wide range of activities. The future of the workplace will have to do a far better job of providing freedom to their workers to engage and locate how they want to do it. As much as I've spoken today about the importance of identity, belonging, and social connection, it'd be a mistake to not talk about focus.
From overseas, as higher wage rates mean that people who hadn't previously been looking for work start to, they're not likely to find it nearly as easy to find a job. We don't think that there are going to be huge numbers of people that have to walk out the front door with all of their goods under their arm in a box. Ambivalent a little bit at the moment over whether or not we see a technical recession. Economists only call a recession here in New Zealand once you've had 2 quarters of negative growth. Now, we had a fall of 0.6% at the end of last year. We had a 1.7% increase before that. So the economy at the end of last year was still a whole percentage point larger than mid-year. And with more people coming into the economy, it seems hard to believe that all of a sudden economic activity would drop. Certainly once you strip out the population growth, it might not look fantastic, but more people coming in means more money that needs to be spent, which generally implies more economic activity. The point here is to say that even if we had one down, one up, one down, one up, we wouldn't have a technical recession, but it will still feel recessionary. That pain is likely to continue for the next 12 months at least, as we go through that period of paying the piper after a period, after that more challenging series of cuts and similar through the COVID pandemic. But we know as well that this is likely the best pathway for the New Zealand economy to get inflation under control, to get us onto a more sustainable pathway so that we can accelerate out to the other side. But we will have to endure those more painful periods for a while yet. With an incredibly upbeat ending.
So none of our projects are consultant-led. We have a contractual requirement to deliver. It has a whole lot of challenges around budgets and costs and so forth. At the start, you either have that mentality at the start or you'll miss it. Always an interesting question, this one. If we didn't have Green Star, but we had Maersk's desire for things like solar, what would be the difference in cost? Wouldn't be much. But there are things we've had to do to achieve this that do cost money. The solar on this project's $3 million, give or take. A lot of the other things will have good paybacks, like moving the refrigeration plant up top. That was a smart idea, but it took the designer who was involved was the one who had it outside. It was us as the contractor and our design team who said that's crazy. Client has to be committed. If they just want to sit on, they play part of this. They've got to give it.
Nisha! Hey!
There we go. I won't sort of say too much more about myself. I don't know who writes that stuff, but I'm Laurie, obviously, MD of Rawlinson's, been there about, coming up 15 years. But it's always good to look at some case studies and practice as well. And also where we're going. So is fluctuations the new normal? Our clients and all whom they engage, such as us and contractors, are they looking to get back to fixed pricing, or sort of looking at evidential costs? So the formula has worked and it's been reasonably close, but I think if you're looking at any decent, it's a good start, but it's only really part of the picture, because what's sort of claimable and what appears reasonable may not necessarily be fair and reasonable for this. Again, there's a risk of all the inflation being passed on to the client. And yeah, especially from our point of view, a lot of time and effort goes into this sort of work for not really a lot of benefit, to be honest. So yeah, it's been a bit of a tough old road. Saying that, the world's got to go on and clients need to build, so particularly big clients like the Ministry of Education, Health New Zealand, and all these infrastructure projects, we can't just stop because we've got issues with fluctuations. On the track and a little bit smarter about what we're doing. Yeah, 2022, I've underlined here a bit of a shit year all round, I think. I don't know about, a year ago, 64 people were reporting supply chain constraint issues. That's now dropped to 31%, so that tells me that, okay, maybe we're starting to get back to a new normal. Should fluctuations be paid after a change in market conditions? So the situation here was we had a contract signed back in, I think it was March or April 2021, without cost fluctuations because it wasn't really an issue back then. But for whatever reason there was a 12-month delay, so the contractor said, well, hey, the world's different now, so can I have some fluctuations? Back to the future. Is there still flux capacity? So the top graph is just us taking the indices for the last 5 years for labour and materials. So labour's in red, materials is in blue. So the bars are the quarterly changes and the lines are the cumulative change. So you can sort of see that the red bars are for labour, they're relatively consistent. And the cost of labour has obviously been going up over time, but almost in a linear type of way. But you can see there how bad it was between about the middle of 21 until about the last quarter of last year in terms of material supply, which is the blue bars. What we found interesting in terms of that was a lot of that is being driven by obviously the price of shipping containers, but also the price of oil. If you look at the price of oil on the right, and you compare that to the blue bars at the top, you can sort of see that those two things are quite correlated. So it stands to reason that if the container price and the fuel is stabilising, then the material price should stabilise as well. They mean a return to fixed price lump sum contracts. Personally, I hope it does.
Thanks very much. As Wendy said, I come to this very much from the disputes angle. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when we're talking about disruption in particular. In preparing for this presentation, a lot of people ask me, well, are you going to talk about the difference between disruption and delay? And as a disputes lawyer, I think, well, I don't need to because they're quite different concepts. On the board there, I've popped the definition of disruption from the Society of Construction Law Delay and Disruption Protocol. Put simply, it essentially refers to a disturbance to a contractor's regular and economic progress. There are 4 key elements that a party claiming for disruption will need to prove. The first is perhaps the most obvious and generally the most overlooked because it seems to be so obvious it goes without saying. And that's identifying that there were activities that were disrupted. It's a simple step to take, but it is important rather than just saying, we've lost productivity, we've incurred $100,000 worth of additional costs. Taking it back to the very first step of what was the event that caused the disruption. And often it may not be just one event, it may be a multitude of events, it may be the accumulation of events. But pinpointing each separate event is necessary in order to go on to prove causation, which I'll talk about shortly. Second is establishing entitlement. And again, we often see people come to us and say, well, we've suffered a huge amount of loss, of course we're entitled to recover that. Well, where does that entitlement come from? Most of you will be aware there is no separate provision or entitlement for disruption in the standard form contracts unamended. So there must be some separate legal entitlement to bring a claim where you're seeking for disruption costs. And as I said to begin with, this is generally pointing to some other breach of the contract. There might be delayed instructions, variations, design changes, or other disruptive events that are the fault of the principal. It's that breach which opens the door to entitlement for claiming disruption. As I said before, there are usually no notification requirements, but just be careful. There are some special conditions that are circulating out there which will have loss and expense clauses that attach to notification requirements, and that can be some basis where a principal might try and trip up a disruption claim on the first instance. We've seen some instances where a disruption claim can be attached indeed to a variation claim. An entitlement might exist under the variation clause itself, so just be wary of that. Also, there may be an avenue to pursue disruption under compensation for an acceleration instruction. Often if it's going to inhibit the product, an acceleration instruction inhibits the efficient progress and productivity, there may be avenues under the clause permitting acceleration for compensation in that respect. First of all, as I said, there are a number of ways in which disruption can be caused, and the best claims that we see will identify each individual event, identifying and analysing each of the operations that are said to have been disrupted, and then describing a narrative link that can be established showing how that event caused the disruption, which then led to the loss of productivity. And go on the offensive somewhat to justify their actions, to show that they have not contributed to the loss of productivity in any given situation. Most of those cases, while they talk about disruption and like delay analysis, different methods will produce different results. So often we'll see experts that have a primary method of analysis, but will also do a cross-check. So they might follow the measured mile approach, but then impact or not. Some care does need to be taken because GERD and the tender allowance for completing activities, and then here we're changing from hours to costs, so the same portion of the earned value analysis also needs disruption. The reasons for that are because disruption claims are inherently difficult to prove. They're not as common as delay claims.
Just a couple of things. If you've got a dietary, it is going to be shared food on the table, served. If you've got dietary requirements, just make it known to, as one of the staff comes round, and they'll make sure that you're catered for. And just to let you know, we've got something new this year. Over in the corner there is a selfie wall.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you